Okay. And hey everyone, thanks for joining today. We're gonna give a few minutes here just as people join the webinar. If you're joining us today, it's a beautiful day in Houston, Texas, and we are excited about this topic. This is one we've gotten a lot of advanced emails, people reaching out and saying, wow, this is a great topic. This is going to be so fun. So thanks for joining us today. Going to just give a couple moments while people click the link. I'm also going to launch a poll. If you've been in a Zoom meeting before, you've probably seen a poll like this, but it's just going to ask you kind of about your perspective on the industry. All of our attendees out there, since you're not speaking today, we'd love to know kind of who's sitting out there in the audience. It'd be helpful for the panelists to know, maybe who's listening in, what their perspectives are on their own career paths, where their curiosities might lie. And so if you don't mind clicking through that poll, I think it's one question. So we'll take you 2 seconds. And we'll just let that run and appreciate that, that data point. Another comment for participants, if you're joining us for the first time today, normally the path we go is to ask you to do Q&A in the actual Q&A button as opposed to in the chat. I think that's something that's sort of on every webinar. They're always sort of redirecting people to use the Q&A, just a little more structured way for us to answer questions and also just to mark things as answered so that we make sure and cover everyone's questions. If you know the question that you already have, please go ahead and feel free to submit that through the Q&A button. Should be a button on your screen on the Zoom app for submitting a question. And if something comes to your mind as we're in the discussion today, just shoot it out and we will be sure and review those at the end. Okay, we still got people joining here. We'll probably go one more minute and then we'll start with our content today. Again, to those who've just joined, since I introduced the poll, there's a poll out there if you don't mind clicking on that. Just a question about, have you always been a broker? Have you always been a supplier? Are you in some other aspect of the industry? Are you someone who's worked on both sides? Are you someone whose curiosity, is struck by maybe one day working on the other side of the business if you're on one or the other? We'd love to know just kind of who's out there today. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So my name is Nate Richards. I'm the CFO of Power Matrix, and we've been doing a series since COVID started. We asked ourselves, what can we do in this niche industry while the whole country and the whole world really is locked down? And I think something that we thought that we did have is this convening power, this ability to kind of bring people together. Where we sit in the industry with our products and services, we get to interact with a lot of the participants in the industry. And so we've been putting out a series of just letting people talk about the issues, talk about their unique perspectives, backgrounds, and so forth. And we've gotten a lot of excitement. So far, we've had between 200 and 450 registrants on our typical weekly broadcast. And so we've gotten just a lot of excitement, a lot of positive feedback. And I just want to thank you all for participating today and for continuing to support that. We've got some more ideas for content. And today we're going to be talking about making the switch. Is the grass greener on the other side? And that's really about people who've worked either on the broker or the supplier world and have maybe switched sides, and in some cases even switched back. What have they learned? What's the unique perspective that they have on the industry? And then also kind of just in this COVID world, do they have any unique insights about, where we all might be going and how they're kind of coping with the changes that we're all experiencing? So quickly today, our agenda, we will do a quick intro. We'll cover the bios of each of the panelists. We'll have some discussion. And finally, we'll finish with Q&A and a quick wrap up at the end. If you are on our email list, you probably already know, but we have a webinar typically every week. Next week, we're going to be taking a break so that the Tiba Northeast Week, if you haven't heard about that, Tiba, the Energy Professionals Association, is a great organization, one that we've participated in since the very beginning. And next week, they're in place of their ordinary Northeast Conference, which typically covers the Northeast retail markets, and it typically happens in New York or somewhere in New England. Obviously, no one's getting together at a conference center today, and so what we're doing instead is having a series of webinars, some really fantastic panels, some really interesting topics. But next week, a full week of webinars, and you can go to the link in our email or to the Tiba website and sign up for that. We will have a webinar the following week on Thursday at 9:30 on 6/18. We're still finalizing the topic, but count on it being that Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Central Daylight Time. And if you have any ideas for topics, please email us, let us know. We would love to consider your ideas and suggestions. Or if you'd like to be a panelist, maybe you think you've got some unique insight or perspective to share, please raise your hand, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Quickly, Power Matrix and Tiba kind of are the co-promoters of this series. We really appreciate Tiba and everything they do for our industry, together with other associations like EPO, RISA, and so forth, many others out there, too many to list, NEMA. We, as an industry, are one that needs a lot of support, that politicians create this industry but don't typically understand it, and these organizations really help us the gap between the consumer, the government, and the commercial aspects of this industry. Last year, we were fortunate to win the inaugural award of Tiba Affiliate of the Year, so we're very grateful for that. And we've got the LinkedIn links for both organizations here. Would love to have you follow us and stay tuned for kind of some exciting major announcements that are coming up in the next 2 months from Power Matrix. So our panelists today, thank you very much to each one of these guys. In one way or another, I've had a chance to work with each of them, either directly or indirectly over the years. And certainly each of them has been an active participant in the industry and someone that is well connected and in some cases very well traveled in the industry. So we've got Eric Swiler today, Senior Manager of Business Development at SFE Energy. Hi, Eric. We've got Bucky Walton, VP and Head of Commercial at APG&E.
Thanks, Nate.
We've got Sean Andrews, CPO at E-Volve Energy.
Morning.
Got JD Schmidt, partner at CSD.
Morning.
And Greg Beckert, managing partner at Scioto and also chair of the Energy Professionals of Ohio.
Morning.
Thanks, Greg. As a quick intro to Power Matrix, our core purpose as an organization is connecting people through technology to increase trust in retail energy markets. We look at retail energy markets and we say, wow, if we could just raise the trust, whether the trust between consumers in the industry, trust between the government in the industry, trust between participants in the industry, if we could just increase that trust, we would have more efficient transactions. And we feel like people working through technology is a way to do that. And that's really kind of where we fit as a business and why we bring this content to the industry every week or two. The products that we have in the marketplace today that you may have heard of, Sparkplug is our broker platform that enables the full life cycle of any concern that a broker might have. You need Sparkplug and maybe QuickBooks and a bank account and some supplier relationships and off you go. You've got a full-on brokerage and everything from mobile to CRM to commissions reconciliation to agent portals, customer self-service portals, reporting and analytics. We cover that turnkey for brokers. On the supplier side, we have the same product. There's a new product in the market called Propeller. Same thing, but for the pre-enrollment phase of a supplier's life cycle, we see there's not a lot of support out there, not a lot of good product offerings that manage the data that you accumulate prior to actually enrolling in business, while you're pricing it, while you're entertaining, analyzing the data, and so forth. This is the product that we have for that. Connecting the two is Exchange, and that allows brokers and suppliers to get out of emailing of spreadsheets. We're a $200 billion a year industry powered by Excel and Outlook. And we feel like there's a better way to exchange data that's necessary to transact in this industry. And so we wrap all of that in an API and allow people to participate through this secure data exchange. And so that's what we do. In case you're not familiar with Power Matrix, if you have any questions, please let us know. And so that's all the product talk today we're going to do. We really try to focus on our panelists. And so today, I just want to give a quick visual on, when we talk about grass is greener and where, and having participated on both sides, I wanted to give the participants just sort of a visual on who do we have here today. If you don't know each of these guys or haven't worked with them, kind of where have they been in their career? So we've got JD here, who started in the supplier world, as well as Greg, both currently in the broker world. Greg was at 2 suppliers prior to starting his brokerage. We got Sean, who was at 3 suppliers prior to becoming a broker and starting up a brokerage. And then we've got Bucky, who started in the broker world and then has been at several suppliers since then. And then we've got Eric, and Eric started in the supplier world, moved into the broker world. That broker was acquired, so we've got sort of a second broker logo there. And then was back in the supplier world, back in the broker world, and today back in the supplier world. So Eric, Eric, if this was a winning bar chart, Eric dwarfs the competition here. It's not. There's no contest. So glad that each of these guys are willing to come and tell their story today. I think, you know, each of their stories is not unique in this industry. I think it's always common. We get together, and back when we used to get together in person, that, you know, someone that you knew and hadn't seen in a while, that the next time you run into them, they might have a different business card. That's not a completely unusual occurrence in this industry. And so we thought, hey, it would be fun to talk about, oh, I forgot one there. Sorry, Eric, there's one more supplier. It'd be fun to just get together, kind of reflect on, you know, what is this phenomenon, and what is it that, people gain from this, this interesting mix of career paths that are available to people in the industry. And so if we could, maybe I'll just start with Eric, and we'll go across here. What was your path to retail energy? How did you end up in this industry, and how did you choose, whether it's a supplier or a broker, to start? How did you come in?
So I was dating a recruiter back in the early 2000s that you know well.
Sure.
And yeah, exactly. Got to know Truett Allen, which I know most people in the industry know Truett. I mean, he's sort of the gold standard in the recruiting world. And he basically gave me a call at one point. I had just started talking to, and actually had accepted a job with Spark, believe it or not. And Truett called me and said, hey, they've got 1 slot left at Constellation. They're building out this new mid-market team to sort of answer the void that was created by Enron's exit. And I took Monty Mickle to lunch and managed to get the job, and just really enjoyed my couple of years at Constellation before being enticed over to Strategic to work with brokers. And then Strategic gets acquired by Direct, and I'm hearing from, you know, some coworkers, man, you don't want to work for Direct. So it just, all sorts of things. I think back in those days, it was a very turbulent part of the history of our industry, right? So, you know, went over to the broker side. But anyway, yeah, just, I mean, basically through a recruiter looking for a new opportunity, and got on with Constellation and learned a ton from a ton of industry veterans now, Josh Hansel, George Hope, just heavyweights in the industry. So
Fantastic. Thanks, Eric. How about you, Bucky?
Yeah, so I actually started in the renewable energy side of the business, spent some time there, and we were building out the first green aggregation. It was a venture capital company, and we were actually acquired for our technology rather than our sales abilities. So made the jump over into the broker world, spent some time there, worked with some great people at Amerex. And then the opportunity to move into retail was presented by Liberty Power. So moved to Liberty, spent several years there on the indirect team. Got to really kind of sharpen the knowledge level that I had of what a supplier is and does, and then really just kind of continued that, and then ultimately have ended up at APG&E, which is a kind of a unique opportunity. We're a very lean organization and focused heavily on our technology stack and how we can deploy that to our partners and brokers in order to really make a difference. So it's been good. It's been very different as far as continuing the progression from large shops to small shop, and have really enjoyed that.
Fantastic. How about you, Sean?
So I was a little bit of a late bloomer, I think, but I was introduced to Reliant through a teacher that I had at the University of Houston, and that had worked at Reliant on the quant team, when things were going crazy between Reliant and Enron, and started as an intern in the risk group, and ended up staying on and working in the structuring team, and learning more about retail, and didn't know anything about the industry prior to that. Didn't know that it existed, didn't know what supplier or broker meant. But learned a lot there really quickly, and moved on to a small rep, which was focused on small commercial and residential, and then had an opportunity to help start up Source Power and Gas, and spent a good portion of my career there. So I've held many roles in front mid office, and really have managed all pricing, structuring, trading, risk functions for an organization through my stint through the supplier world.
Fantastic. And JD?
Yeah, no, thanks, Nate. So yeah, my background of literally being at one supplier and then being on the broker side now too is kind of interesting and also surprising as well. Since I was at Reliant for just about 17 years, basically started off sweeping floors and doing janitorial service. But started off basically at the onset of deregulation in Texas, and so there was a bunch of problems with enrollment, switching, billing, all that good stuff, and so started off in the back office, doing billing, complex billing, validation files, all that good stuff. Quickly realized I didn't want to be there, and moved my way up kind of the sales organization. Started the indirect desk back at Reliant, and then also started doing direct sales. And then after the NRG acquisition, started managing sales teams, and so was managing direct and indirect sales. And then also with the NRG acquisition, ran sales teams doing solution sales and project development on the renewable side. So I've been with CSD for a partner for about 2.5 years now, and it's been a wild ride and exciting. And I mean, my focus has always typically been on the sales side and with customers. So it's really cool to be in a spot where you can really affect change for customers. It's exciting and fun times.
Thanks. And Greg? You started out the dawn of retail.
Right. I go way back, man. So I got into this industry. We're going back to 1994. Deregulation was just really getting started, moving its way downstream into the more, we'll call the retail space. It had been opened up on the wholesale side. And I've got a marketing background, and I was working for an advertising marketing firm. One of our clients was a local producer here in Ohio. Started learning about this deregulated situation we had going on, not only in Ohio, but I started moving across the country. And I was really intrigued by it. Engaged, moving on from a family standpoint. So I was a little worried about the stability of the environment that I was in from a marketing and advertising standpoint. So I really started investigating the whole industry. And just by chance, Enron had just purchased the lead company that started the retail efforts across the country here in Columbus. And so I got my foot in the door there. They had an opening to be a phone jockey. I said, I'll take it. I don't care. Got in. And I've kind of done just about every facet throughout the industry from a sales perspective. The smile and dial, knocking on the doors, commercial industrials, working in different markets across the country, to managing different teams, and then kind of took that platform across over to Constellation, did the same thing there. So it's always been on a sales function focus, but it's been a really interesting journey to see this from 95 to where we are now. A lot of fun.
Great, fantastic. Well, hopefully all the participants now can really appreciate the background, who we have sitting at the table with us today, the proverbial Zoom table today from the comfort of their homes. And the next question kind of we have is about the sort of making the switch. Each of you at some point in your career was drawn to the other side, and in some cases kind of looked back and switched back. So if you could each maybe go through and talk about what attracted you kind of to the other kind of sales function. Really we're talking about kind of sales functions, either indirect or direct, or managing indirect for a supplier, each of you and your different kind of permutations. So what attracted you to going the other side? Maybe we'll go back the other direction, starting with Greg and going back to Eric.
All right. Yeah. So for me, it was kind of a combination of events, I guess. One was, I was started out at Enron, was there when it folded, went through that whole downward spiral. And then I was at Constellation, and so went over to Constellation, was there as well in 2008. So again, it was, not only had I seen this movie, I've been in this movie, kind of repeating itself. And in a sales environment, a lot of this is you want to kind of control your own destiny. It's a part of, feeling, getting value for what you're worth. And at the same time that Constellation was going through its financial difficulties, that was in 2008. That's the same year that Ohio introduced Senate Bill 221, which was the catalyst for pushing Ohio forward to a truly deregulated state on the power front. So it's kind of the confluence of outside pressure that I've experienced before to an opportunity that presented itself, and seeing those and just saying, now's the, if there wasn't a clear sign, I don't know what it's going to be. This is the opportunity to go ahead and make that push forward. And so the rest is history.
Fantastic. JD, 17 years with the same supplier, which is very unique. That's actually probably more unique than people who've moved around more. You might be the rarer bird. And then jumped over to the broker side. What attracted you to join up with the CSD team?
Yeah. So I guess I had a pretty interesting perspective with starting up the indirect desk, and at Reliant we were a little bit slower to get to the indirect side. So when the desk started back in 2004, so I helped kind of I managed third parties, and even worked with folks on the panel today and covered broker shops in that role. So I saw that across from a nationwide perspective of third parties that we worked with, and really kind of saw the landscape of the marketplace. And was even at the first Tiba meeting, right, way back in the day. And so I saw this kind of perspective of the large direct sales organization, and then also the growing of the indirect sales, and really saw that transition take place over time, where you had these big suppliers that were very heavy direct sales, and then you saw this kind of infiltration of third parties coming in to really help customers and really make this painful process easy for customers. And I saw kind of holes in different areas of strategies or of implementations, and work to kind of combat those on the indirect side to win business. But then over time I kind of saw this shift of a lot of sales coming from direct versus shifting to indirect, and said, hey, this is where the future of the market's headed. And this was years ago, right? And was kind of looking at that of when's the right timing to get into the third party side. And so as I mentioned too, is I've covered a lot of brokers in the past, and so have built, long-term relationships with folks. And so it was kind of a natural fit and a timing perspective to when we could relaunch CSD, right? And really get that taking off and what direction we want to head with that, which aligns with all of our kind of backgrounds of, a little bit more complex and sophisticated customers, heavy demand response as well. So that's really, I saw kind of a gap there. And even with the evolution of moving from direct sales to indirect, there's still quite a bit of nuances that can take place to help clients. And so we saw a void there, and, we've been, lucky enough is what I'd like to say, but we've done good work for clients, and we've helped grow that as well, because of the transparency. So.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Sean, what attracted you to join the E-Volve team? I know becoming E-Volve was also a path. So share a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So the last couple of years I was at Source, some of the things that really started to come to light. And I think my path might be a little bit different than most folks because I came from a front mid office role, and just the understanding and need to look at and manage and customers' usage patterns and what the impact of that can have on what they pay from a unit cost perspective, not to mention from a consumption and demand perspective. And really started looking at different types of solutions that, that were going to be needed and that have already been started hitting our industry in other parts of the U.S. where energy prices were higher. And when I say other parts other than Texas, where I'm based, and, had an opportunity to go work for a solutions business that was well-funded and, really was I think I echo some of the things that JD's mentioned around, gaps of knowledge in the industry and information, that we could take to the customer side that we had on the supplier side that most brokers, consultants didn't have access to. So I thought, that was a great opportunity to do that. Great chance for me to move from the supplier world, which is very focused on commodity, at least had been for a long time. And I think that's changing now. A lot of suppliers have relationships or have products that are beyond pure commodity, but really go focus on taking the most value directly to the customer. And I think that sitting on on the side of the customer and the client and being able to talk to them directly versus where I was sitting before, which was maybe 3 or 4 levels removed. I could have a salesperson ask me a question that came from the broker that they were trying to get an answer for their client. And I'm sitting in, a pricing and supply role. And I'm saying, okay, here's what, we can do. That gets translated to my salesperson at the supplier, then that gets translated to the broker, and then the broker translates that to the customer, and you're playing telephone. And, there's a lot that's lost in translation. And so, I just think that the knowledge that we have coming from the supplier world is very useful on the side of the business. And that's really what attracted me.
Cool. Yeah, it's unique on our panel that Sean has not a pure sales background, but more of a sort of technical, analytical roles in his career, and sort of now in a broker function. So thanks for sharing about that. And Eric,
Yes, sir. For me, starting out as a salesperson selling direct to end users, specifically, megawatt and below. When you get an opportunity to talk to a supplier about managing brokers, that seemed like an interesting transition. And then of course, beyond that, you realize, hey, if I want to sell directly to customers again, why not be a broker, right? You've got a whole slew of suppliers to choose from. One of the things on the supply side that we all deal with is, I'm out in Ohio or I'm out in Illinois, but I'm great up in New York and New Jersey or, what have you. So it was interesting for me as a broker. I loved working directly with customers, but I think over time, after acquisitions and looking at new opportunities, I felt like the best spot for me was to sort of take care of broker relationships. I mean, that's where I feel like I'm best served. But yeah, I mean, to me, I have an incredible amount of respect for the direct salesperson that still works at a supplier that calls on any size customer, because that's such a tough role. A lot of respect for those guys and girls. And but yeah, I think for me, having all the different vantage points to choose from, dealing, from a supplier standpoint, talking directly to customers, managing brokers, and then being a broker. I mean, it does, I think, give all of us on this panel unique and very valuable sort of set of tools to go to market with. So.
Fantastic. And thanks for the reflection on kind of looking back, entering the supplier indirect sales world, managing those type of relationships. So each of you, now we've kind of covered about how you've kind of moved about through your career. I imagine that unlike maybe some folks that might have stayed kind of on one side and maybe speculate about what it might be like to work on the other side, each of you have spent time kind of in both seats. What unique insights do you feel like you've gained, and then do you feel like you've gained any leverage in your current role? By leverage here, I mean sort of like additional empowerment, additional insight, additional effectiveness in your current role as a result of having been sort of on the other side of where you are today. So maybe again, we'll start with Eric and go back across to Greg.
I think one of the things I recall from being a broker was dealing with suppliers who couldn't turn around pricing, or dealing with all of a sudden you wanted to change the MAC language or what have you, and not having the flexibility. So I think having been in both roles, it gives me and everybody on this panel a lot more understanding. When a broker gets all irritated about, hey man, you can't turn around a price, it's like, guys, look, there's a lot of moving parts on the supply side that you just don't always appreciate if you've only ever been a broker. And vice versa, when a broker is refreshing you to death on something and you're thinking, man, what is this guy doing? Look at the market, I can understand that too. Sometimes you have customers that just, that's what they need, right? So I think being able to see how this process from, customer interest in supply agreement all the way through to execution, from all angles, it helps at least in understanding with the counterparts that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Great, thanks. How about you, Bucky?
Yeah, I think Eric touched on it a little bit, but realistically, it's the understanding of what goes into acquiring a customer for a broker or a partner. Until you've kind of walked in those shoes, having a door slammed in your face, being hung up on, trying to get past a gatekeeper, you really don't understand how much work and effort goes into just trying to get a customer to the point of pricing. And the value that really is derived from that process. So, for me, I think the insight is really that, we don't take any of the customers or any of the pricing requests that we're presented with for granted. And, we really try to understand how our brokers and our partners are acquiring those customers so that we can give, tailored solutions to them. But customers to us are not a number. They're not an RCE count. They actually matter, and understanding kind of the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into that process really gives us some unique insight from at least my perspective.
Thanks. How about you, Sean? You mentioned a little bit before about understanding how the dynamics of a customer's actual load has kind of added to your capabilities. What else do you feel like it sort of empowered you in your current role as a broker?
I think just general market knowledge. Being on the rep side, you have access to a lot of information, and definitely helped early on to have good understanding of what drives the market. as a broker, you can see prices moving up and down through those, relentless refreshes. But what you might not understand is what's driving that, and it's just much more dynamic than just, natural gas is up, natural gas is down. And so just having an understanding of the different components. I mean, fortunately, when I was at a supplier, I had an opportunity to be part of the technical advisory committee for ERCOT, and just going through the stakeholder process of what it takes to change policy. But in coming over to the side of where I'm working directly with customers, I mean, I've got much more appreciation too for what it takes to win a deal, and what also to lose a deal, right? So I get to go through those swings, and really, as it pertains to my relationships with our reps that we deal with, or suppliers that we deal with, just being able to empathize with where they are in the process, and and really try to manage our clients' expectations, and stay in front of that, in terms of timing.
Cool. How about you, JD?
So I guess I'd say just a couple of perspectives that were a little eye-opening to me were, one was just the sheer amount of homework that's involved in pricing requests, contract requests, and really this sort of what I would call kind of mixed bag of responses that you get back. And so that's, and for us, we're, a company of 10 and under, right? And so it's a significant amount of lifting when you're going out to, 8 or 10 different suppliers. And then when you ask for specific terms, you may be lucky to get 5 of those back with what you requested. And so that was surprising to me. And also when you get close to transacting, and you have agreements, whether you've been, heavily negotiating those before for larger clients, or even if they're kind of run of the mill, there's always errors in the last minute. And so, and along with that kind of service side too, is I think that plays a pretty decent role in, who really kind of earns the business rather than just price outright. Because if you can't get a response from someone on a billing issue, or a confirm for a power lock or a gas lock, then, you're spending a lot of valuable time that you could be doing other things with, tracking down kind of that homework. So that was kind of a big eye opener for me. And then I would also say, I think from my previous role of seeing, literally thousands of transactions a year, and sort of, being in kind of that deal flow and managing teams. And then on our side of we're hunting and working for customers. And so that deal flow then comes back down to 100 or less transactions a year, right? So those transactions really count, right? And so you've really got to make sure that process for customers is seamless, right, as you're growing that. And so I also think part of the role of third parties is really managing that from a client perspective, so we're not refreshing someone 15 times, right? And so we've got the tools and the data to help manage that with customers of, hey, the market hasn't moved. We're not just going to refresh people to just refresh it. And so I think helping manage that with suppliers so they're not fatigued with a ton of refreshes, or, hey, this is closing when it's really not. And I've seen a lot of that too on the supplier side. So I think just trying to, be as upfront and transparent as we can without, it kind of goes back to just setting the right expectations with customers and suppliers, right?
Cool. Fantastic. Wow. A lot of unique points there. How about you, Greg?
It's kind of like what Eric was saying earlier for me, the perspective of, from always on the sales side, and working with suppliers, you get an appreciation for what that process is. When you're with a supplier, you have that I'll call it a luxury of, when you have an issue, you can go down the hall, you can talk to the pricing team. What else can we do? You can go down the hall, you can talk to the folks in legal. What can we do to tweak this contract? Can we do this? Can we do that? So you lose that. You have to learn how to navigate that, but you understand what goes into that thought process for those different groups. So you can work with your rep and kind of help together figure out how we're going to conquer whatever the issue is at hand at that point. I think then you look to the other side. So we employ a 1099 model here primarily. And agents in this industry are agents for a reason. They like doing their own thing. They don't fit into that corporate mold, and they're type A individuals. They want to just do deals. So you're trying to help them understand and get an appreciation for what has to happen on the other side. As multiple folks have pointed out, this refresh. It's, hey, listen, you're taxing a system. And if we don't produce results, you're not going to, there's going to be potential ramifications on down the line. It's spending those political dollars, that political capital, as I call it, unnecessarily. So let's be smart about what we do, how we do it, and when we do it. So there's a lot of coaching going on that side. And I think that helps the agents. Again, they've never worked, typically none of them have worked in this environment on the corporate side. So they don't have that understanding of what goes into a transaction. And, how do you work with your client to understand are they really asking for a refresh? Is that something you want? Let's get to that point. So helping them be more effective and impactful with their clients, I think it helps tremendously.
Wow, so many good insights there. I just took a couple of notes here, but it sounds like certainly empathy is the sort of one of the themes, the appreciation for, hey, when I send this pricing request over, or when I get one, I know how much work, homework was one of the words that was mentioned. I know that I'm giving someone some homework, and the relentless refresh. Well, that was sort of another good sort of catchphrase, the relentless refresh, and the variability between responses. Interesting insight from JD, having been at one supplier and knowing it sort of top to bottom, spent so many years there, very familiar with sort of one brand name in the industry. And now as a broker, seeing that there's, wow, not everybody does it that way. And in fact, you get a wide variety of different responses and processes. And then Greg, I thought it was really interesting that, the idea that you have kind of the whole team down the hall on the supplier side to get the whole deal done. You got legal, you got pricing, you got risk, you got credit, and so forth. Whereas the broker, you're kind of at the mercy of those teams coming together, with whomever the supplier of choice is that you're trying to transact with. And then, pointing out that, there's errors made kind of at the finish line. In some cases, and on the supplier side, again, you have the team there to sort of walk that through. You can literally walk into someone's office, walk into their cube, or hit them up on Microsoft Teams or Zoom, as we do it today. And whereas in the broker world, you're kind of communicating through an indirect BDM or another sort of sales team infrastructure to get to those people. So really interesting insights. Well, since the theme of this series has really been around COVID, and as we're all here today speaking on Zoom, wearing shorts with our dress shirts so that, we can look nice today. We had to go dig up a collared shirt. Very nice to see we covered 100% on the collars today. Thanks, guys. And everyone got a haircut too. I know Bucky and I, that's not a long trip for us, but some of you guys still have some work to do on the haircut side. So thanks for dressing up. But talking about COVID, is there anything kind of, what are each of your thoughts now on how you see the industry, how you see the way that things are changing, things you think maybe will change, not change, never go back? What are your reflections now that we've sort of fully appreciated the dynamic backgrounds that each of you have? And again, we'll go with Greg and kind of finish up with Eric, and then we'll hit Q&A.
Well, yeah, I think, my path has always been impacted, or the changes that I've experienced, the bigger changes have always been a part of or a reaction to some major event. Typically those were financial events, the suppliers that I was with. Here we have some, but I guess the point being is the sun comes up the next day. The new norm is a little bit different than what it was the day before, but you keep marching forward. I don't know if it's heads down. I think it's heads up, eyes forward, find out where the opportunities are. They're going to be different. They will reveal themselves eventually as long as you stay vigilant. And of course, it always goes back to what can you do to help out your peers, your clients. I think you stay true to that where that compass is pointing, we're all going to be all right. We'll all pull out of this eventually.
Great. Thanks, Greg. JD?
Yeah, no, I would probably echo a little bit of what Greg just mentioned too, is that I think hopefully we're seeing this, that, you know, this too shall pass, right? And we'll move on. Hopefully Corona gets in the rearview mirror, you know, sometime here in the next less than 6 months would be great. But I would tell you some of the things that we've seen that have been different is, you know, just on some of the larger customers or those that, you know, again, participate in demand responses. There's quite a bit of, I guess, lack of data and lack of actual, you know, information around kind of where customers' usage patterns are right now. And so we've been spending a decent amount of time, you know, working with those clients, making sure, you know, that their current agreements are intact, and is there any help that's needed there. And so those are just kind of some nuances that I think are pretty interesting, that shows, you know, the fact that in the industry of how big we are and, you know, how volatile things can be, is that just the amount of, you know, real-time information is just not quite there yet in the industry. That, and then, you know, I would say some of the projects that we're working on, that are, you know, not necessarily just pure procurement, that those we've seen, you know, quite a bit of, it's probably not a shock to anybody, but we've seen those come to a bit of a halt or a pause on those. But then fortunately enough, we've seen some new stuff pop up. But kind of in closing, we're going to, I think, invoke a flip-flop only shoe rule in the office for a little while until we get back to face-to-face meetings.
I know we're all anxious to get back to a face-to-face. I had one of my first face-to-face meetings this week, and it was, I kind of felt this secret urge to hug everyone. I just haven't like really a human being that isn't my child, you know, or my wife in some period of time. So, and I'm not Mr. Warm Fuzzy, so I know that's just excited to get back to actually shaking hands and breaking bread with people. I certainly feel that. How about you, Sean? Thoughts about COVID future?
Yeah, I mean, you know, in terms of just, you know, the perspective of being on supplier and you know, broker side of the world, I'm not sure that I have super unique perspective as it pertains to COVID just directly from that. But, you know, our focus is in reducing our clients' overall spend on energy, and that isn't changing. What we've, you know, learned, and JD touched on this, I mean, there's definitely been a slowdown on projects, but there's also a shift in the way that people are spending, and I think that'll hold true for some time as people realize that cash is king, and they need to hang on to it to survive for a long period of time. So to the extent, you know, that what we've been able to do for our clients, I mean, what we have been really required to do is really just to be nimble and be patient, you know, present them with opportunities in different ways. Maybe a client that was purely focused on capital expenditures now says, hey, I can't do any capital expenditures, but I still can do operational type expenditures. So when it comes to, you know, doing as a service type of model and changing where they track projects, I mean, we're seeing that for sure. So yeah, I mean, the other thing is, you know, we've and JD may remember this, you know, back in 08, 09, when credit dried up because of the financial crisis, I mean, C&I business completely shut down for Reliant. And it gave us time to work on processes and efficiency. You know, what are we doing as a business? You know, let's start looking at looking inside, and because we can't focus on the outside right now. And let's spend some time doing that. And it took, you know, quite a bit of time, you know, and that was right after, you know, right before NRG purchased Reliant, and then NRG purchased Reliant, and then a lot of things started to change. And really, there was a big change in the industry at that point, I think, with some of the consolidation of what was broken up during deregulation. So, I mean, necessity is a driving force behind innovation. And, I think, we're learning from a perspective of, how do we get better at doing what we do and providing value to our clients. And we get to spend some time doing that. So it's been good.
Great. So we've heard kind of from our brokers, our customer facing as far as where you guys are today. But so now we've got our two suppliers. So Bucky, what are you saying from the APG&E perspective?
Yeah, we've actually had a kind of unique experience. We have not seen impacts as drastically as other people have seen it. We really had focused last year and kind of in 2018 as well on our technology stack and how can we become more efficient, how can we operate as lean as possible so that we can make sure that we maintain our competitive edge. And one of the things that we've seen because of that is sure, the deal flow velocity has slowed down slightly during this period, but realistically, we're not seeing the financial impacts that some of our peers are. And we believe that it's because we've driven really deep relationships with our partners. Communication has always been extremely important for us. And we're finding that we're hearing customer issues. They're coming to us and saying, we're concerned about this particular facility. We're concerned about this particular location. What can we do? What options do we have under our contract? And so because of the amount of communication that we have with our sales partners, we're really able to kind of get ahead of this and minimize the impacts, not just to APG&E, but also to the customers. And, we hope that continues, but ultimately our role is as risk managers. And COVID is just another kind of risk management event. And, I think the previous oil and gas downturns was mentioned, the credit crisis. We've been through several of these events before. This one is probably a little bit more far-reaching in that it impacted almost every industry at some level. But if you're really wearing your risk management hat day to day and on a deal-by-deal basis, the impacts have been somewhat negligible, at least for us. And we're really happy about that. And I think the future is, realistically, we walked out of our office on a Friday, and today is the first day I've been back in 2.5 months. And we've had very little impact. So I think that, the future of at least this space is that, we're probably going to have less people in the office, but it doesn't impact our velocity. That also has shown us that there's no reason that we can't be spending time outside of the office, working remotely, spending time with our partners, spending time with brokers, with agents. So I would expect to see some strategies change there. But realistically, the future for this is kind of about what risk is there as we emerge from COVID, what industries are still going to feel the impact moving forward, and how do you manage that?
Great, thank you very much. And cool to hear how the investment in technology, I know APG has spent a lot of focus and time and capital on that in years past and how that's paying off for you guys. Eric, from an SFE perspective, from your own perspective, what are you seeing? Anything unique with SFE having a parent company, Canadian based? Any unique aspects from the SFE look?
I would say, Bucky, we have a lot of the similar advantages, I would say, that APG&E does that Bucky described. I mean, we've spent over the first few weeks of COVID, our senior VP of sales jumped on calls with brokers just to let them know, hey, SFE is solid financially. We are full steam ahead. Where you're seeing some of the competitors, stop pricing, having financial difficulties and stuff. We have been very conservative from a pricing standpoint, which has served us well. And yeah, we've just been really business as usual. In fact, we are off, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but we're well ahead, or at least on pace for our goal this year. I mean, it's been pretty remarkable with the environment that we're all obviously acutely aware of. But yeah, SFE is full steam ahead. 2008 was mentioned, which Bucky and I talked yesterday, and yeah, you see a lot of the same similarities, probably times 10 with what we're all dealing with now, back from the credit crisis. yeah, with Reliant, I remember not being able to lock gas without about $1 premium on gas. That was brutal. But yeah, from an SFE standpoint, we are very stable and just business as usual, frankly. So
Cool, fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much. Heard some interesting themes there. Really interesting theme of brokers and suppliers partnering in terms of conversation with the customer, having more of a hand in hand to the customer as co-risk managers. I thought that was really an interesting theme. Also, just a shift in the dynamics of capital projects, whether some projects going on hold and either creative financing, sort of the as a service that Sean mentioned as one sort of path forward for capital projects, or just different types of projects coming to the front. And then this lack of data, I think there's something that come up on some of our past webinars around who really knows what the load impact is going to be for different types of customer classes. Sometimes we're guessing, sometimes we try to think of historical analogs, where can we go and look, but where is that data set? Where do you go and get that? How load forecasting is becoming maybe something that was lesser appreciated, underappreciated as an aspect of kind of the back office, now very much in the forefront as we think about what is it going to mean to serve a particular type of customer. So really great insights. Thank you all for sharing. Really quick, before we wrap up, we've got just about 5 minutes. Want to hit the Q&A. I thought that this question might come up, and of course the number one question that's asked, which is margin. Who's making more margin? This is the classic kind of finger pointing exercise of brokers and suppliers, which is the other side is making all the money. They have the sweet deal. We carry all the pain. We carry all the water. There's no end. Having been in this industry myself now for almost 15 years, that's not a new complaint or a new maybe speculation that we're here suffering, and the other side, again, same thing, broker supplier, right? The other side is making all the money and we're doing all the work. So who wants to touch that lightning rod? I'll leave this as an open question. Who wants to jump out there?
I can jump for, I don't know if this is good or bad, but just because I've sat in that position of the supplier and had my opinions about brokers and consultants, which has changed dramatically since I've come to the other side of the business. As JD mentioned, there's a lot of legwork that goes into trying to get a deal done, and you don't win them all. So yes, it's true that, if somebody's telling you, I guess it depends on the person that you're talking to, but there is often, especially in larger deals and highly competitive environments, a broker can have more margin than a supplier. And if they're telling you that, then, I guess, whether you trust them or not, but often that does happen. It does happen. It goes the other way sometimes too, but I've definitely seen that. Because, if you're going to win, if you're on the supplier side bidding on a, let's say a hospital group or a refinery or, some very large client, well, it's going to be highly competitive. And the retailer, at least in my experience, can take on a lot of risk, and meaning, reduce their margin significantly to try to win those deals. There's a lot of management on the other side of the equation from the broker consultant, to manage the term of that agreement. It's not just booking the contract, but, you're probably managing hedging strategy and updating the client, periodically with where they are and how their spend has been tracking and stuff like that. So, you on the supplier side, you don't know everything that's going on the other side, necessarily, how much time and effort's being put in. So in terms of cracks in the price where margin is baked in, I wouldn't say that there's definitely not the intent, at least in my experience, for that to happen. But, what you're going to have is you're going to have risk premiums that are associated with different aspects of hedging the deal, whether that's energy, ancillary services, or any other components.
Any other thoughts on this first question from Tim? I think his other kind of angle was maybe less about kind of the finger pointing aspect and more kind of as a curiosity from a broker. Are there other ways that suppliers make money on the deal that isn't just direct price margin? In other words, I think that sometimes I've certainly heard speculation that they're just sourcing volume for their trading business, or they're looking at localities for their load if they own generation. Other ways that suppliers justify whatever margin it is that they take on a deal. Any thoughts on that?
I can add a little bit of color there if this is helpful too, Nate. So I guess the little bit of the broader question though is that, I think we kind of hear the common theme of there's no margin in these deals, brokers make all the margin, right? However, so if you look at a deal by deal basis and there's concern that suppliers aren't making enough unit margin, right, per deal, but then from a corporate level of those suppliers, and if you look at earnings and if you look at what's going on with the growth in the retail spaces, they love retail. They're buying other retailers, right? So if it's that bad of a business, why do we keep growing it? And why do new reps keep entering the market? So I think there's a bit of a disconnect here between the deal flow activity and sort of where the margin is on a deal by deal basis versus a portfolio level, right? And so Sean kind of touched on it too, is that, even though that individual that's working on that one transaction says margin is terrible, from a corporate standpoint, suppliers can manage their risk however they want to. And so then that can translate into a totally different margin depending on what their risk tolerance is, depending on what their credit profile is. So that's maybe just a different perspective. I don't know if it gives an answer to it, right? And then I will tell you this too, especially with the lack of liquidity in the market that we've seen on the wholesale side, is it's a wide bid-ask spread right now, and extremely wide in ERCOT and also up in PJM. And so we've seen some really interesting stuff with the lack of participants and where people are willing to extend their collateral on positions and trading. And so I think that's a good opportunity for the market. And it's something that really kind of proves the point of customers really need, even sophisticated customers need help. That may help touch on it too, because it's a different story at someone that's actually doing the transaction versus where earnings shake out, right? But
yeah, I think that's also a fair common point, which is you think about we talked about how suppliers are vilified, but brokers are vilified, sort of in a they don't do any work. But both of you pointed out, especially on the larger scale customers, actively managed products. Things of that nature require a lot of work, require analytics, require a lot of data, require a lot of examination and time and planning, as well as active management throughout the contract life cycle. Eric or Bucky, anything to add on that as the two that are currently sitting on the supplier side?
Yeah, I think the thing I would add is for us, it is the norm that a broker's margin is higher than what ours is. But you also have to kind of take a step back and look at efficiency and scale. We have anywhere, I think our last count, we had over 700 partner agreements. We're not transacting with all of those day in and day out, but we have a tremendous amount of scale on our indirect side. And, we're able to facilitate our business based on, the scale that we've been able to build. And I think, when you're looking at a competitive market, you have to drive efficiency in order to continue to operate on that kind of that edge. You don't want to necessarily be giving anything away or losing money on deals, but there are economic pressures that play into where we price deals on a daily basis. And, the big kind of vilification, at least the way I see it, is my margin is not tied directly to the broker or the partner's margin. I don't have any insight into how long it's taken them to acquire that customer, how much work they've done for that customer, what type of other services they've offered. So for somebody to sit there and say, well, you're making all the money on this deal, that's kind of a hard conversation because you're making assumptions. And, realistically, we don't try to hit certain metrics based on ratios, et cetera. What we're trying to do is make sure that the margin we're placing on each megawatt hour is enough to serve that customer and turn a profit for our shareholders. And, I think that's kind of one of the big misconceptions, is that it's kind of this game that is always being played. I mean, sure, everybody wants to make more money, but the reality for us, at least, is that, you know, we're trying to do things to maintain our competitiveness, maintain our service levels, and ensure that, you know, we're here to serve the customers that the brokers are trusting us to take care of.
Cool. Okay. Let's wrap up with this last question here, which is, you know, maybe we'll just let each of you kind of speak to it, but what can brokers do better for suppliers, and what can suppliers do better for brokers in their day-to-day operations? Thanks to Chris Ward for this question.
Jump in real quick. Just, I think it goes back, somebody mentioned it earlier, you know, and this is true, I think, in anything, it's the communication. Has to be consistent, has to continue. I mean, for any relationship, personal, professional, you know, that success of that relationship is dependent upon that communication flowing both ways. And I think sometimes there's frustrations, or it doesn't work its way to the true entity, be it the agent or to the customer. And I think that the better both sides, the better we can be at communicating consistently, this whole industry can keep moving forward in a positive direction. Again, that's at a high level. That's my quick answer.
That's a great point. Great point. Communication, sharing, so everyone has the whole story throughout the transaction and the relationship. Eric, do you want to weigh in on the supplier side?
Yeah, I think strictly from a supplier standpoint, and I tried to do this, you know, during my days as a broker, is trying to, you know, as a broker, I think respect the supplier's time that goes into facilitating, you know, what the broker needs out of the supply side. Meaning, you know, if you have a broker that sends you 10, 12, 15 opportunities a week and you never win anything, at some point, you know, as a supplier, I have to say, look, man, I love you, but I've got to move on to another relationship. And it's not always about price. I mean, I think, again, as a broker, I usually worked with about 5 suppliers most of the time that I had a good relationship with. I was very comfortable with their contract language. I was comfortable with their, you know, their flexibility on making contract changes depending on the customer, just a whole litany of different things. And, you know, I don't ever begrudge a broker for not sending me business, but I do think that it's a lot easier if a broker understands, like, hey, I have to move somewhere else where, you know, we're both actually making some money here, right? So
Awesome. Appreciation for the win-win as kind of a fundamental part that makes the relationship work. Wow. Hey, thank you guys so much. Really heard a lot of interesting insights today. Thank you for all sharing your stories. I know the dynamics of the industry is something that we're at a unique position, but hopefully, and I think we all believe that this is really just one more risk that the industry, which is essentially a risk management industry, right? We're really kind of in an insurance type of business, whether it's power price insurance or so forth, but you know, hopefully this is one more risk that we just have to manage around, and, you know, another one will come down the road. So hope everyone is staying well. Thank you so much for all the participants today. Thanks for the great questions. And again, we will see you guys soon. We will be sending out a recording of today's discussion, as well as a link to the slide deck. For what we're doing from the broker side is giving people sort of what we're calling a spark plug stimulus package around free EDI HU access and free digital signature to kind of enable brokers to work from anywhere during the COVID crisis. So thanks again. Thanks to all the panelists, and everyone have a great rest of your week.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nate.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Bye-bye.
good job, Nate.
Yep.
Thanks,
Great
y'all.
work.
Thanks, Nate.
Take care. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.